Hey, good morning, everyone. Today we're talking about how to do your virtual coffees and actually make them work. Most people are doing a ton of virtual coffees or one-on-one and getting nothing out of it. Today, we're going to fix that. This ain't the business summit for perfection. It's for the messy builders, the loud learners, and the ones who break the rules and the mold. If you're ready to stop playing safe and start making noise, taking ground and building something real, you're in the right damn place. The 2025 Badass Business Summit. Networking without the bullshit. September 17th through the 19th in Fort Worth, Texas. Skip the small talk. These are raw tactical sessions where real relationships are built, strategies are swapped, and momentum is made. Not just another pile of business cards. Break shit and win ugly. Go to badassbusinesssummit.com. Register now and punch status quo in the face. Badass Business Summit. You weren't made to follow. You were built to disrupt. So last week I did a virtual coffee with someone, and as we were talking, they told me that they had done 192 virtual coffees in 6 months. Now, that may sound like a lot, and it is, don't get me wrong, but what they said next was just tragic for me. And what they said was nothing came from those 192 conversations. And I thought, damn, that is a lot of people you talk to that there's led to really no sales, no referrals, no new business, no anything. And it's frustrating because unfortunately, I think a lot of people have to go through a lot of these conversations to figure out how to have the right conversations. So I'm going to try and frame how you do virtual coffees so they actually work. So you actually get a ton of value out of doing them. And ultimately, so you get an ROI, return on investment for the activity. So here's what she did tell me, which was really phenomenal. She goes, I learned a lot about the conversations and how to have them in, the next 200 conversations that I get in. And what she just didn't have was the framework to really make it work for her. So that's what I'm going to try and give you today. So for those who don't know, a virtual coffee or a one-on-one is when you get an opportunity to sit down across from somebody else and have a conversation about what they do, who they are, who you both sell to, and it needs to have some sort of outcome. And I think most one-on-ones or virtual coffees were set up in a way that people said, it should be a half-hour meeting. One person should get 15 minutes, the other person should get 15 minutes, and this whole thing should be packaged up as kind of a feel good activity. And I think that's what most people are doing. But I think virtual coffee, especially if you're in B2B networking, need to have a more significant purpose to them, a more significant outcome, if you will, to every one of the conversations. So here's kind of my framework and structure for doing the proper virtual coffee so you start getting real outcomes. So first rule I have in every virtual coffee is they're going to go first. And why do I think they need to go first? Because I know that based on how they tell me who they are, where I can take or how I can move this conversation forward to a lot more successful endeavor, right? So let's say you can just tell a lot about a person as they tell you their story, as they describe who they are, as they describe who they're looking for. You can really get a lot of information for them. So rule number one, they go first. And it's really, really simple. I start off every virtual coffee very much the same. And the way I start off is, hey, let's do this. I really have no agenda today other than get to know you. So, how about you tell me your story? I'll tell you mine, and we'll see what turns up. This does really good for setting the stage for how the conversation is going to go. It kind of takes command of the conversation. And a better way of saying it, it allows you to guide the conversation down a very particular path. Sometimes you're going to get pushback from people like, okay, now you go first, you go first. And I always respond with this really simple phrase. Hey, it makes a lot easier for me to explain what I do if I understand where your journey is and where you've come along that journey. So it usually gets them to flip it around and say, okay, I'll go first. As they go first, what I'm trying to think through is how do I best help this individual? How do I, get them value and get them a solid outcome? So I'm looking at a couple of things as they're telling me their story. Is one, who can I introduce them to? Who can I, get the doors open for? Who can I get them connected to? And who can I, brighten the horizon with? The second thing I'm looking for is what opportunities can I give them? Can I tell them about upcoming events or networking things or places they should be, attending or things they should go to? And maybe other networking events they should be attending. The third thing I'm looking for is is there any knowledge or wisdom that I could potentially share with them, or is there wisdom and knowledge that I should learn from them as we move forward to really solidify this relationship? Here's what I found is this may sound bad, but going into every conversation, you have to make some assumptions about the individual. Okay. And, there's some really easy assumptions to make. So for me, I know that if somebody's in their first year of business, they're still trying to figure things out, right? They're still trying to understand what the business is. They're trying to figure out how to sell what they're trying to sell. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns in their world as they're trying to build things out. If somebody's 3 to 5 years in, I know they've, gone through a few business iterations. They likely have a virtual assistant or two helping them out, and they are starting to grow. If somebody's 10 years in, that means they've survived a lot. They've got a lot of systems in place. They probably have some solid personnel working with them, and then, they're probably building a revenue positive business. So, what I like to think through is as somebody's telling me their story, how can I prove my assumptions right or wrong? Because I know that if somebody's less than a year in business, then there's a lot of things that they need to learn. So, the majority of the call is likely going to go to more of what can I teach them to help them get further down the line in business. If somebody's 3 to 5 years in business, what I'm looking at now is, okay, so they probably have some solid connections that would be helpful for me. So, what connections can I open the door for them, and how can I get them to open those same connections for me on their end? And then 10 years in business, I'm 8 years in business right now. So, somebody who's 10 years, I could probably learn a lot from. So I'm going to be just on the side of what can they potentially teach me. So after they go first and I make my assumptions and those assumptions get proved, now I'm going to think through, okay, how do I introduce myself in a way that allows us to get solid outcomes? Here's where I think the magic really happens in the conversation. Telling your story and where you've gotten and how you've gotten there should take less than 5 minutes. Like the whole first portion of a virtual coffee between them telling their story and you telling yours should take about 10 minutes at most. Let's get into the conversation. Let's get out of the conversation, get really, really refined on, what they're telling us. We're gathering information, and then let's get our story really, really dialed in. And, telling what you do does not need to be a diatribe of your life, your journey, and all the things. I look at it from how can I quickly tell them who I am, where I've been, what I've endured and overcome, and how I got here. So, the hero's journey, if you haven't looked that up, is a phenomenal framework for this. So, I look at it this way is how do I say I've had past success? I made a move, a leap of some sort in my business. I failed tragically, almost lost everything. This thing happened that worked really, really well. And now, flash forward, here's where I am now, and this is what's working in my business. So, if you hear me tell my story, it's the same way every time. I'll give you the kind of the framework that I use. I say 27-year sales guy, turned 40, decided to start a company, launched my business, almost lost everything. My wife had to cash in her 401k to get her my Jeep back from repossession, and to save our farm. And we went from that moment to almost 8 years later. I'm the founder and CEO of Success Champions Networking. So what I've done is saying, okay, 27-year sales guy. Okay, there's some cool success there. It's a long time to be in the sales game and find success. I made a shift. I launched a business, right? In launching a business, I almost lost everything. There's a lot of factors that play in there, right? I almost lost everything. So there's an empathy thing that starts to happen. My wife having to cash in her 401k gets them to lean into the story, right? Because a lot of people, as they're building a business, can understand the hardships that somebody goes through, right? Dial it up to, she cashes in her 401k, saves, get our Jeeps back, saves a farm, and fast forward to where we are now running a successful company. What this does is show not only have I had success in the past, I've gone through the hardship of building a business. I can empathize and understand where you are. And now I have some success on the back end of it. It's a really, really cool cycle. And as you saw, that took me like 60 seconds to go through that story. What you need to figure out is what is your quick, fast framework to take somebody through that takes them on that journey with you so that you can really get dialed into to getting through that story. It's not necessarily about getting through it fast, but getting through the proper points and then moving forward. Once I get past that story, I will usually ask how they want to move forward, and I'll frame it like this. Usually, I will say, "Hey, one or two, three things we can do moving forward." I said on these calls, I love teaching people some things that I've figured out over the 8 years in business and 27 year sales career. If you're up for that, I can teach you a thing or two. Two, I can make some really cool introductions of some awesome people that can open some really cool doors for you. Or three, we can just have small talk. I promise you, it never gets to number three. I throw it out there as an option, but one, I don't want to do it. And two, most people don't want to do it either. And a lot of times they'll go with, one or two. No matter how they're going to go, I'm going to guide the conversation to make sure we get outcomes. So I'm going to combine teaching with getting introductions. So what I'll typically do is take them through a simple framework, and I'll say, okay, tell me what your best industry is that you sell to, or I'll say, think about your largest current clients. What industry are they in? Right. And get them to walk me through. They'll say, like, Sally, CEO of a manufacturing company. Brilliant. Okay. When I say that, I'll say, what other things would Sally buy for her company that wouldn't compete with you? And this question stumps a lot of people because they've never thought about it. All they think about is their lane, what they sell, and the different things and the decision makers and what they buy. So I'll have to, walk them through this portion so they understand, we're going to rethink how they've been thinking about this from a long run. And I'll say, okay, so let's think about how big is Sally's company? And they'll say, a million plus a year. How many employees? They'll say like 30 plus employees a year. I say, cool. So if you have a CEO with $1 million plus business, 30 plus employees, let's think about some of the things they're going to be buying for their company. So if 30 employees, they're definitely buying payroll of some sort, right? They're buying employee benefits. They're probably buying computers, which means MSP, IT tech, right? They're buying phone systems of some sort, voice over IP. So you're talking telecom. They're probably buying some software. They're probably buying some HR, whether it's in-house or outsourced, right? They're probably buying some sort of printing or mailing of some sort, right? So there's a lot of things that are purchased. And as I walk people through this, sometimes they look at me funny because they don't understand why we're going deep into these other services. And I said, well, imagine let's say that it's an employee benefits, that's the big thing they buy. What happens and I always ask them this, what happens if you meet 100 people that sell employee benefits? And they always said, "Well, that'd probably be a huge impact on my business." And I'd say, "Why?" And they said, "Because I'm never going to sell employee benefits. So I would assume that if I met enough people, that somebody's going to have clients that readily need my service." I'm like, "That's exactly right." So I get them to start understanding the concept, the power of getting introduced to referral partners versus always thinking about end user clients. And I say, let's do this. And a lot of times I will jump over to LinkedIn, or if I know people off the top of my head, and I will start making introductions for them right then and there. I'll literally just go to LinkedIn, type in employee benefits, click on first connections, and I'll start asking them, do you know Mark? Do you know Misty? Do you know Sam? Right. And if they don't, I'll start making introductions because let's reframe this for you guys as well. There's a difference between an introduction and a referral. An introduction, two good people go meet. A referral is an introduction with a sales discovery call attached, meaning somebody's looking to buy the services or other. Most times, what people are doing is making introductions, they're not making referrals. So, what I'll be doing in the moment, if they say employee benefits, I'm going to introduce them to as many employee benefit companies as I possibly can so they can go have this type of conversation with them. Now imagine if I sit across from you and I make 5, 6, 7 introductions for you. I increase my value and my worth in to you because I'm going out of my way to open these right doors. So when I gets to after I make those 5, 6, 7 introductions, I'm gonna say, can I walk you through the same process for me? And they'll say, "Sure." And I'll say, "Okay, my ideal, clientele would be a company that runs some sort of licensing or franchise program." And they'll say, "Okay." And I said, "So, think about a company like Sales Acceleration. They have 250 plus, advisors out there, and one of their key focuses is to teach their people how to do networking. So it's a really good conversation for me to get them invited to our networking groups." So I'll say, do you know any sort of licensing companies or any companies that are in that space? And oftentimes people look at me and say, no, I don't know anybody. And so I'll say, just like I went to LinkedIn, would you mind going to LinkedIn and let's type this in and see if there's anybody you're connected to? And oftentimes they will. And if you say, okay, just go to LinkedIn, type in, whatever industry, click on first introductions and see what pulls up. Right now, in their head, most people are not used to this idea of introductions versus referrals. So when you ask for an introduction to people, they think it's a referral. So they're going to be extremely hesitant at first. Okay. So what I'll always tell them in that moment is, look, I'm not looking to sell these people anything. They are not my key target. Just like I wanted to get you connected to the employee benefits companies because it doesn't compete with you, these people I don't compete with, but we both sell into the same world. I want to try and see if I can build relationships with them. So it won't be a sales call, it won't be a sales pitch. This will be a conversation between the two of us, just like we're having. Usually that's enough to get people to understand that it's a cool thing. And I'll usually get one or two introductions from that. Okay. A boss move that I've found that works really well is they usually feel uncomfortable as soon as they make those introductions. So what I'll try and do is go quickly back through my LinkedIn and find one more introduction for them to make them okay with the process because most people, this is their first time they've ever made introductions like this because they're really, really nervous about the process. And here's what I'll find. You can do on average of 5 virtual coffees or 5 one-on-ones a week following this methodology and legit come out of there with 5 to 10 solid introductions to other people. And it's those other introductions that allows you to deepen your bench for referral partners and people you want to get connected to. And a lot of this is about building that solid word of mouth sales team of people who can bring your name up in the right conversations. So if you follow this framework of them going first, making some assumptions about their world, getting very tight on your story, then guiding the conversation into introductions or knowledge, giving them solid introductions, and then very specifically asking for introductions for you, you will completely change the dynamics of these virtual coffees and they will start getting very specific outcomes. I'll do in a later video of how do you decide quicker which direction you go in the call, and then how do you get connected with the exact right people in your virtual coffees? But for now, follow this framework and make sure you do me a favor and subscribe to this channel if you got any value out of this whatsoever. I'm going to keep doing these every Monday, hanging out, but we're going to teach networking, continue to get it dialed in, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll be here every Monday live, 8 a.m. Central. Y'all have a fantastic week. Love you, mean it. See you. Bye.